Hi, my name's Alice Dyson. I'm the COO of One Media IP plc. We're a digital music record label. We were founded 15 years ago. We've always been involved in the digital world. We've never had physical product. It's always been about the advent of digital income. So One Media is a boutique record label. We were founded 15 years ago by my CEO, Michael Infante. And essentially, we're quite unusual. We're a boutique business, but we're on the London Stock Exchange, so we're actually a PLC.
Hi, my name is Emma McGann. I'm an independent artist, singer-songwriter and live streamer, and I've been releasing my own music, self-releasing for over a decade now through my own record label called Cross My Heart Records. And I like to do things differently and go against the grain and blaze a trail of my own, and I try and weave that into everything that I do as a music artist.
My name's Darren Hemmings. I run a company called Motive Unknown. We've been around for 10 years now, and we are a strategic marketing business focusing on music in the main. And we kind of have positioned ourselves in a space where we work with artists and labels really to kind of help them refine their operation, create more money, create better connections with fans, and just generally elevate everything they do to a better level. Recently, we've also branched out, so we're now increasingly working with other startups and also working in the kind of creator tool space. So we have a lot of clients in and around sort of music creation and production as well, which is quite a growth area for us. We work with quite a broad spectrum of independent labels and artists. So we're working with labels like Lex, Mexican Summer, Partisan, covering quite small indie campaigns through to quite large chart-topping ones. And I think within those, part of our operation generally is to bring a bit more thought and muscle to the way indie labels approach things. I think indie labels often, they're not flush on labour generally. They don't have a large number of people there to cover every conceivable need, and so they do draw upon agencies like ours to guide them on, where opportunities may lay, where the new things they want to focus on may sit, and generally they see us as a kind of insight and a perspective for them that they otherwise wouldn't really get access to as to, new and emerging areas that they should be looking at.
There are thousands of independent record companies. And they're all doing clever and innovative things. And the problems they face within the record industry, they're not the same as the majors because they're working at a different scale, but they're very similar. So if you're looking at the verticals when you're building a business, you'll perhaps come up with a solution that works really well for some of the big names. And that might work really well for you if you're trying to raise funds. But actually, if you're going to reverse it out slightly, you can have another vertical that solves a problem for the independent sector. So it's really important that any tech actually has a look at what the indies are doing, because they're the ones who are really innovating.
I think in the main, my message to any startups that are looking to work with, labels in general, but indie labels in particular, is to understand that indie labels are much smaller and significantly more agile. I think among the indie industry in generally, there's a sense that, the grounds are shifting beneath us, and they really are. There's big changes going on. And I think on a certain level that can introduce a slight fear. But I think actually a lot of the independent labels don't fear change and actually want to embrace it. And so for us, we've been quite instrumental in taking new technologies into certain indie labels because we can see how it can materially help them. There's a million ways in which I think startups can be of genuine value. And I think increasingly over the last 5 years, and particularly in the last 12 months, there's been a significant lift in the attitude, the level of engagement people are prepared to put to things, because COVID has meant that certain things have pinched the revenue for labels, and that's made them have to consider new opportunities, new innovations. And so I think it makes it I think now it's probably the best time in the last 5 or 10 years for kind of innovation and for engagement with innovation within the independent label space.
So my experience as a self-releasing artist for as long as I've been doing it has kind of been both challenging and rewarding at the same time. And I guess what I love about it is that it's an ever-changing, ever-evolving thing. So there's always new tech on the horizon. There's always new platforms to look out for. And some of the challenges that have kind of come with it over the years as an independent include balancing multiple plates at the same time. So you're not just focusing in on the creative side, you are also your own manager, your own PR agent, your own booking agent. So there's a lot of balancing to get your head around in the early stages. But if you can, really put the time in and, learn that side of the kind of beast and understand how that can benefit your future song releases, that's where I've seen success, I guess. And the rewarding part really comes in when, it's you're informed as an artist. Independent artists, maybe, 20 years ago, I feel would be more solely focused on the creative side. Whereas today, we have our fingers in so many pies and are doing so many things at once. And I think that's a good thing. It gives us this kind of killer instinct to survive and stay on top of the noise and the kind of saturation of it all. So when it comes to seeking out new tech companies or startups to work with, I try and keep my ear to the ground as much as possible, and I'm always looking for, personally, teams of people that are looking to disrupt and do something completely differently, shake things up a little bit. Some recent examples of people we've worked with in the kind of virtual production side of things for visuals, for music would be Hello Rococo, who have created a kind of motion capture bodysuit, which I've been experimenting with. There's also Splash Mob, who are a wonderful startup who focus in on the kind of fan experience at live shows and how they can interact with the show from their mobile phone. So I think over the years, I've definitely gravitated more towards solutions and kind of opportunities where it's keeping my fans in mind and their experience of it all. So whether they're watching me on a live stream or whether they're listening to my music, we might, do what we've done over the last 4 years and create an Amazon Alexa app so they can interact with me from their smart devices at home with a daily songwriting tip from, Robot Emma on the Alexa scale, or whether it's virtual reality as well. In the earliest days of VR kind of falling into the hands of the consumers, we kind of tried to get in there early and start developing content around that to see how we could place the fan in the shoot so they could be more a part of the experience than just a person that's sitting back and consuming that content. So I like to work really closely with the teams that we do work with from a tech aspect, and those are the kinds of companies that I kind of gravitate towards, the ones that have the fans and also the artist mindset in mind as well.
So One Media, we've always been at the front of technology. We started off as a digital business. We have 250,000 bits of music that we represent, and we have to make sure that they're future-proofed. And so that's about digital fingerprinting. We've always been looking at the metadata, making sure that they're going to be well served, so that that digital fingerprint is always up to date. If you think at the beginning in 2001, there was one digital store. And so there were 7 bits of metadata attached to that, and there are now in excess of 70 bits of metadata. So you're having to constantly go back and make sure that your track is going to be discovered. And then if you think about how the music consumption has evolved into, hey Google, find me this track. What's required in terms of the back end to make sure that your track is served? So when you're thinking about things that are going to be useful to consumers, how are they going to find your track? So, and then within that, most importantly, how is your track going to be monetized, and how are you going to make sure that revenue comes back to you? Because if you're a small independent company, you have to make sure every single transaction is accounted for, and that every single bit of money is paid on to the artist or rights owner or estate or whoever owns that piece of IP. In order that more IP can be created, we have to make sure all the money flows in, particularly into the UK. We've always led the way in Britain as being amazing creators of music. Now, in the world of streaming, that expands, and so local territories are coming online. How do we make sure that we continue to punch above our weight, which we've always done really well? And that's looking at the tech, making sure that it's future-proofed and that it will continue to be monetized. As a company at One Media, as I say, we've looked at tech and we've made sure that we have future-proofed with the metadata. But the issue of piracy. So if you look back to what happened in the record industry in 2001, it was turning 23 billion turnover. And then by 2014, it had dropped to 14 billion. So this massive period of re-education, of making sure that people going from a free piracy situation of Napster to Spotify, to where it's served with ads, to now where they're prepared to pay for it. So, and then within that, piracy doesn't stop, it moves in the times, so they just get smarter, the pirates get more clever. And so as companies, you have to get smarter too. So when we're looking at how we can best serve all of the artists we work for to make sure that none of their money is going astray, we came up with a solution called TCAD, which it's actually called To Catch a Thief originally, and then we renamed it called the Technical Copyright Analysis Tool, which is really dry. But essentially it's about making sure all of your tracks are in the right place at the right time, so street date reports, that they're being delivered to the right territories, that they're being monetized in the right way, that nobody else is splitting your market, taking your market share, putting it out, giving it a different name. So we've been really evolving and making sure, okay, this is where the market was, this is where it is now, and this is where it's going. How are we going to make sure that we absolutely protect the IP in order that writers can continue to make it? Because without the money coming in and creating longevity for artists, there won't be new IPs being made. And protecting the artists is really important. And that's the job of the record company. And so we took upon ourselves we're a record company, but we identified the problem. We go, okay, we're not a tech company, but we know how to solve the problem. And I think that's really important for other tech startups. If they're wondering, how can I get into the record industry? What are the problems? Then you need to go and talk to record industries. You may be really smart and you might be able to build a tech stack that's unbelievable, fingerprinting it off the scale. But does it solve a problem that a record industry business needs? And so the only way to know that is to go and talk to them.
New technology and new developments in technology are a fundamental part of who we are as a business. We are 100% tuned into the idea that everything is constantly evolving, and that we're only as good as our last achievement, and we have to stay at the front of our game. So I think within that we do a huge amount of work to stay abreast of new developments and not fear change. So even for us as a business, we do a lot of advertising for our clients to execute that side of their campaigns. But we're aware that AI at the moment, for example, is looking quite likely to supersede that whole space. And you're seeing this around certain areas of innovation at the moment, like Google Shopping and stuff like that. But rather than take a view that this thing is going to shut us down and put us out of business, we're leaning into that and saying, okay, how can we engage with this to understand it better and see what it could do for us? So in general, we're always keeping an eye on these different technologies as they develop. But I think we're always questioning how they can work for us. I think something we make a point of doing as well with startups when we're engaging with them is making it a two-way street of communication. Often we've had people come to us with a brand new startup or even an idea, and often we've gone back to them and said, we love this, but it would be a lot better if it could do this and this. And we sort of understand that these people are trying to refine their product, and that we actually have a mutual benefit in that product being refined with our assistance. And sometimes we've even used that for internal tools, where we have reporting systems that we've used that are better than the ones we had before, and they're better now because we actually went to them when they were in their very early stages and said, look, we love this product and we think it could do a huge amount for us, but there's just a couple of things that we really need it to do or do better. And if you can get that, not only will we be using it, but we've got like a bunch of clients who we think will make great use of it as well. And so I think with a lot of it, it's understanding that need for there to be a two-way street, of communication. But yeah, whether it's keeping an eye on trade press for things that are coming through, or literally haunting like Hacker News and Product Hunt and these places where often, it's just the 3 developers in the Ukraine or something have said, oh, we've got this idea. But if it's filling that gap where we're, there's quite a few areas where we've sat there in the past and said, if only someone had built a solution to do this thing. So if we see someone who's 60, 70% of the way to doing that, we'll jump in, find them and talk to them and say, look, we love this. And if we can work with you on just giving you some feedback, we'll get to a place where we'll be using it, and we think a lot of other people will too.
So there's lots of strands of income coming in, and helping record companies effectively police their IP, monetize their IP, look after their artists is one of the key things that startups can do to help the industry. I think as the market grows, there's new opportunities. And so there's companies like Ordu that are really good companies. They've identified a problem whereby, and it's all about the transaction, making sure the right money is passed on to the right owners. So they're coming up with a solution whereby you can listen, it listens in an environment where you would have your PPO income, and it's looking at trying to make sure that those transactions go to the right artist. So that's a really clever bit of tech, and it solves a problem it's a real problem that needs solving. Click and Clear, another one. So you have gymnasts using music, and it's providing a solution where it will enable that license transaction to happen in a really straightforward way. So that's a really useful thing. It wasn't necessarily a problem we knew we had, so they did really well to come and say, okay, this is the problem, this is the solution, this is why it's really easy for you to do. We've actually done all of our homework, and you're going to be able to monetize an area that actually was unmonetized previously.
I guess when it comes to what tech startups could be looking out for me, a problem that I'm always trying to kind of solve in a more fluid, nicer way is kind of looking at all of my data and all of my statistics from one place. As an online content creator and a music artist, I have my kind of presence in a lot of different places, and it would be easier to kind of see everything in one sleek, fluid dashboard. So I can see my music streams, but I can also see my YouTube stats as well. And there's definitely some solutions out there currently for that, but none that I've found that are fluid and make that additional role that the independent artist has to juggle every day just a little bit easier. So that would be something that I'd like to see in the future.
I mean, there's certainly quite a few areas where we quietly wish there were better solutions in place, not necessarily entirely new solutions, but better ones out there. I mean, we're doing quite a lot at the moment around NFTs, but not remotely in the space that everybody else is. There's a sort of rush towards NFTs at the moment as a sort of means to sell a piece of virtual art for 6 figures and all of this kind of thing. And we're quite contrarian in a certain sense, that we're looking at this and saying, I'm not really interested in a thing that you can sell to one person and just for a cash windfall. We're interested in how something demonstrably unique in a digital sense can be used to power things like a fan club, for example. So we're currently looking in spaces like NFT-powered fan clubs, where, for example, you may sign up, and because this thing's on the blockchain, you can encode discounts into it. So maybe becoming a fan club member, you'd get 3 opportunities to get a 25% discount in the artist fan club store. We know that you can tie these things into Google and Apple's pay systems on your phone. So again, we're looking at, could it cross over into the real world so that you have a thing you'd show on your phone, maybe at the merch stand at a concert, and you could get 10% off merch. And in that context, things like NFTs are genuinely really interesting. It's just sort of unfortunate that they've become slightly derailed by a kind of gold rush into a certain space that we feel is not sustainable and is likely to go under. I think beyond that, there are other areas that are, again, for us just feels quite boring and practical in a certain level. Ad management, I think, is still an area that, we do it, and we currently manage it all ourselves in quite a manual process for the most part. We've seen startups attempt to move into that space, but I think there's still a lot more could be done, fusing kind of AI and, the best use of a platform, recognizing that sort of your Facebooks and Googles are the best places to run digital ads, and really start delivering solutions that actually work for the artists that I think often sit below a tier that we work with. The sad reality, I suppose, is that, Motive Unknown being a business of a certain size, we work with a client of a certain size, but we definitely have this perpetual sort of guilt about the fact that there's a strata of artists of indie DIY artists on the rise, and that segment of the business is growing at an exponential rate now, and there aren't really very great solutions in place to provide them with a kind of all-in marketing solution or something that genuinely delivers value back. So, it's somewhere I've seen a few companies sort of attempts to go into that space, but there's quite a lot of hot air in what's been proposed, and I think there are practical, demonstrable solutions that could be found in those kinds of areas. So I think things like that are great. We're also looking at things like fashion. Undoubtedly for artists, the world of direct-to-fan e-commerce is a really vibrant one. It can create huge, better margins, and whether you're Taylor Swift or a small emerging punk band from wherever, D2C still has the same opportunities for you to create great margins and revenue and build connections with fans and stuff like that. So, the world of fashion is interesting because increasingly print on demand, t-shirts and hoodies has become more of a thing. So that's great because that's mitigated risk. But we're increasingly looking now at things like cut and sew on demand. So if what you want to sell is like not a printed Fruit of the Loom t-shirt, but something that's very much, cut to a certain type. And, I think for women particularly in merchandise generally sort of suffer. I feel like women's merch is pretty awful in that it's very much, here's 25 men's t-shirts and there's one option for women. And things like cut and sew on demand could create real solutions there to provide different tailored cuts and different things, And again, there's solutions that are sort of perhaps not the sexiest, they don't get all the kudos of NFTs and all of that. But these things will actually probably make artists a lot more money if they can create great items that almost bridge a gap from it no longer is merch, but is apparel, is fashion. It allows people to create quite a multifaceted sort of empire for themselves. So a lot of our space at the moment is looking not just at the music around artists, but the other things that go on and how can that be done better. And things like fashion, NFTs to manage fan clubs, those are the areas where at the minute we're kind of looking at all of that and thinking, this all connects up in a manner that can genuinely create a lot more revenue for our clients or for artists in general.
The record industry is still evolving. I'd really love to have a tech startup come in and say, we have a really good idea what the next format shift is going to be. And I'll go, wow, tell me all about that, because we've just gone through this huge shift. We're only just coming out the other side. We've re-educated people. You really understand where the next shift is going to be, and another format shift, which format shifts are generally always good for the record industry. So let's try and understand where the next junction is going to be and how we can be at the front of that in order that we don't have some of the issues of the past. So actually we're going, okay, we're preparing, we understand the consumers, we understand what the needs, we understand how they're going to evolve in their listening to music, and actually we're making sure we're ready for that next change. That's a great position to be in. And that would be really exciting. I really look forward to that conversation where a tech company goes, right, I've got this is where we're going next.
I think in approaching people for the first time, there's so much that goes into a first impression for me, and I think for most people, right? So that introductory email should be personable, and it should really show that obviously you've done your research, but there's a conversation to be had afterwards. It's not just a closed off one email question, and also just reaching out to artists like the humans they are and not the opportunities they could be, I guess, is really, really important. I feel like a lot of brands do mass emails that are kind of cold, maybe unsolicited in some instances, where that's an instant turn off if it's a copy and paste. We want to know that the person who's reached out is interested, they have their stuff together, and they know the kind of roadmap of how they want to work with you. So that's the biggest mistake, cold emailing, don't do it. I feel like it would probably only bring you not so great results as the company. I always love to see active prototypes of whatever it is that they've got out there in the world, whether it be just even the earliest demo, something that I can get my hands on and try out for the first time. I love that. But also, you know, depending on what level of their journey they're at, they might not have that. So if not, just a kind of clear blueprint of their vision is what I want to see on a one-pager to understand how I can fit into that and how I can help them, and vice versa. So that's what impresses me about any tech startups out there. And also from just like a social platform point of view, one thing I've noticed is that if a particular brand or tech company that I want to work with is really active on social, that kind of piques my interest, because I know they're actively having conversations in their field with people, and it shows to me that they're trying to kind of expand their circles further. So to me, that's kind of a big plus. So those are the two main things. A client roster to me isn't necessarily the be all and end all. So if you don't have any mainstream names on your roster, for example, any household names, any recognizable people, it's not that I'm not going to be interested in you. It certainly helps. But it's one thing to consider as well. If you have your client roster, make sure you showcase that. If not, make sure that your blueprint is solid and is easily visible on your website.
I think, as is the way with the record industry, has always been the way, it's about relationships and about conversations and about talking to people. So do your homework, find out about the company, find out if your solution is relevant. And if it is relevant, make it super relevant by going on and finding more about the company. And if you're not sure if it's relevant, have a conversation. Say, we've got this, and we think it might be relevant to you, but can we try and understand some of the problems you may be facing so that we can work out if it's applicable, or actually this is where we are day one in terms of our plans, but actually we want to evolve our business here, and we'd really like to talk to you about how we might be able to do that with you so that we create a solution that really fits. I think if a tech company comes in with a solution that requires me to work harder, that's not a great position. So if I'm going to have to employ more people to make it work, they come in and they say, we have this great bit of tech, but it's going to take 3 months of onboarding, and within that it's a £30,000 onboarding fee, and I'm still not sure how it's going to benefit me. That's not ideal. So having a solution that reduces all the barriers to entry, so you're just streamlining, so it's like it's a no-brainer. Say, this is your problem, this is my solution, this is how it's going to make your life easier, and it's either going to make it easier because it reduces the workload, or it streamlines the process, or makes you more efficient, or makes you better at what you do. Means you're going to be able to scale more quickly, means you're going to be able to take on more staff, means you're going to be able to acquire more content. Whatever it is that is your the key driver for your business, if it makes you in a position to be able to drive more quickly forward, that's what you're looking for from the next tech startup. The record industry is about relationships. Working with artists is about relationships, understanding what it is they want to achieve in their creative careers in order that you can support them with the infrastructure you have, so that they can focus on making music and you can focus on creating longevity for them. So working with partners that say, we understand these connective relationships, this is your end game, this is why this relationship is so important to you, and this is why it's so important as a new tech startup that we listen and understand what it is you're trying to achieve. And that comes in talking, it comes in leaning in and listening and asking questions.
I mean, I think for me, what always impresses me whenever we're talking to a startup is a sense that they've done their homework and they have attempted to understand how the music industry works. You know, often, I mean, an instant stumbling block is there seems to be an assumption that the music industry is flush with cash. You know, so you'll talk to people and you'll be like, yeah, this product looks great. And then they go, yeah, it's like £4,000 a month. And you're like, that's never going to happen. You know, that's just, the music industry doesn't have that much money, or certainly not the area we're in, you know. And so I think any company having a keen sense of who they're talking to is only smart, you know, to make sure there's more likelihood of a connection. And then I think equally just, you know, having a receptive mindset. So listening when we're giving feedback and engaging to try and understand our perspective. Because I think sometimes there's, you know, at its worst, I think there's been a sense of arrogance that people have come in feeling like they've found a solution that we've all been too stupid to find ourselves. And that's neither right nor fair to the music business. We're very aware of the problems and things out there, and usually there's a very good reason why a solution hasn't presented itself. So I think coming in with an open-minded attitude and a preparedness to listen and understand, that maybe that your perspective needs to change a little bit is good. It creates a good environment in a conversation, I think, if somebody's showing that they listen as well as sort of in sales mode for what their product is. And I think just leaning into that, and discussing things quite readily just creates an atmosphere in which, you're much more likely to get a positive outcome from this stuff. We all want to find great solutions. Everybody does. And so let's work together to find it. It's just a case of, we're all on the same page really. We've just got to find what the solution is. I never cease to be amazed at how much people are prepared to share their insight and wisdom. They want you to understand their worldview on this so that you can craft a better product. And they're not charging you for it. And some of them could. Do you know what I mean? They might go, well, this is all free advice, that's going to build your company. But actually, in around the sectors I tend to move in, which is mostly independent, people are very keen to find better ways of doing things. They're very open-minded. So, it's great to engage with that.
I think for any tech startups out there trying to reach out to independent artists specifically, research at the very beginning is crucial. There's nothing worse than a cold email from somebody that you don't know that might not get your name right, or an example of a guy yesterday who reached out to me to compliment me on a remix that I've never remixed anything in my life. So research is so important, and also having like a clear understanding of how the two parties are going to benefit one another. So setting the tone earlier on to show that it's going to be a two-way street, and the artist is going to get something beneficial out of the whole experience as well. I would also say that persistence is something that I notice as an artist with people reaching out to me. If they're reaching out in an email, or they're going through a manager or somebody that I know, then I'm more likely to recognise or kind of see them if they kind of try and reach out in multiple places. Even if it's on a social DM, independent artists, I think most of us appreciate and welcome that, and would probably encourage anybody to do so as well. And the most important thing for sure is that research, and having an understanding of where the artist is currently, maybe some of their most recent projects, and just being informed so that they don't, I guess, make a fool of themselves, and it leads to a successful project for both parties.
I mean, I think my advice for anyone when they're looking at who they should be working with, first of all, yes, it's possible you could work with a huge artist, but I think it's far more likely that you're going to get more traction with smaller artists at first, because there's just a sense of the risk involved, and their audiences and the size they have to manage and things like that. So in general, I would say to most startups, there are huge benefits to working with independent artists. They're going to lean into these things more. Indie artists can be massive artists too, so some of the biggest artists in the world were born of indie labels, so it's not like indie is a byword for not being a huge act. But if you're talking about working with artists on the rise, then yeah, you'll get more traction on the grounds that these people are prepared to give you more of their time. They're working to build themselves up as well, and so you have a shared goal in that you're both trying to achieve bigger things. And I think at that point, that's where it makes a lot of sense to partner with these kinds of people.
I think there's a lot of benefits for tech startups to reach out to small independent artists. We have this killer instinct to kind of try and stay above the noise of it all, and we have that drive, and having that lens into how we see the music industry as it is now, how we use the tools we're using, how we use the platforms we're using on our own, and how we're making it work. I think that's a really valuable insight for anybody to have. So, working with smaller teams as well. You're not necessarily going to have to jump through hoops and hoops and hoops just to talk to the artist. You can talk to the person that matters pretty much straight away. I know as for myself, I want to be talking to the teams one-on-one and brainstorm exactly what's going to happen. So I think that's where you're probably going to reap the best results, and it's those conversations and that relationship building with the artists and the team itself, which is going to just end up with the best kind of project that you both had in mind. So smaller teams is a great plus, and talking one-on-one to the artists, it can also lead on to future projects as well if it all goes well.
The technology that's really interesting, I think, at the moment is the idea of sound labs. So you're looking at voice recognition. So when you ask for a track to be played, how are you going to get played the track you want? And how do you ask for the track you want? So there's got to be some consumer education about how do you find new music using your voice and as this tool. And as a record company, if someone asks for Beethoven's Fifth, which Beethoven's Fifth are they going to get? You know, there's a load out there. Or if they ask for the latest Justin Bieber song or Little Sims track or whatever it is, are the algorithms in place that can hear you properly in order to get you the track you want? And because it's a passive transaction at this point, there's nothing for you to see, you're just using your ears, and so you don't necessarily know that what you've asked for has been delivered. So making sure, once again, that those transactions are safeguarded in a way that the consumer is educated as a record company, what you can do to educate your fan base to ask in the right way. So tech solutions where there's this sound lab experience, really exciting and really groundbreaking. If somebody can crack that, that's really exciting.
I mean, I think around a lot of tech, the things that really interest me are, you know, probably the things right on the front edge of stuff. So AI, I'm particularly interested in at the moment. I think it's an interestingly divisive area in that some people fear it and other people lean into it more. I tend to be in the latter camp. I think actually it can do a lot to help people. Equally within AI and advertising, it's getting fascinating, not to get too boring and technical, but in a world where privacy is now ratcheting up, thanks to iOS 14 and things like that, you're now seeing more AI solutions to report on conversions of sale. You know, those kinds of things are currently being deployed at scale for large brands. But there is an argument, if you wanted to put the cat among the pigeons, that a similar AI solution could, for example, tell you, you know, how many streams on Spotify you got from your marketing efforts by, you know, a process of analysis and comparison and all these things. Where at the moment there is no means to really provide a kind of A/B, you know, a sort of cause and effect comparison. There's a sort of wall in between that you can't really get around. So I think in that sense, AI is definitely one area where things are getting quite fascinating. I think I'm curious to see what more can be done around the live streaming space. You know, I was always a bit less interested in just a film of an artist performing live, and I was much more razzed by things like, you know, the stuff that was happening in Fortnite and these kind of immersive experiences. Partly because I've got a 14-year-old son, and at the time that the things like the Marshmallow Fortnite gig happened, you know, he was like having a mini rave up in our front room, you know, and to him this was just an event. To old people like me, it was, you know, quite odd because it's just a computer figure in a computer game, and you're a bit sort of oddly dismissive. But you know, these things are events, and they can excite people just as much as a regular event, you know, to a certain audience. So I think there's a lot of things around those technologies that I think is really fascinating. I'm equally curious about whether there will be a world in which things like fashion can be portable into those experiences, and whether, you know, you will be able to buy unique items that can exist not only in Fortnite but in Call of Duty, and you know, whether, you know, imagine if there was a sort of fashion tier that inserted into every game so that your personality and who you are, your expressiveness about yourself can go into these things, because those are all areas where, you know, if I'm a big fan of artist X or Y, I might want to be in these games wearing their t-shirt. And if you get that right and you get it at scale, then there's millions and millions of dollars of revenue, you know, potentially there to gain.
I've got my eye on virtual production currently. We're at a stage now where there's software and tech out there that is making the TV shows and the films on our screens today look the way they do. And some of this software and these tools are accessible to the everyday person. Some of these tools are even free at this stage. So with virtual production, I'm really intrigued to see how artists are going to push the envelope with that and almost create new and outstanding visuals, how that is going to really kind of shape their vision in the way that they want it. So they're not necessarily having to go through teams and teams of people to get a result that might not be what they wanted in the first place. It's allowing more creators control over their visual projects, and it's allowing me to have a lot of fun in a motion capture bodysuit as well, which is always a plus. So virtual production, I'm really excited about the kind of future of that. And one kind of area that has always been exciting to me and still is every single day is the live streaming world, which I've been in for a number of years now, about 8 years at this point, and it's brought me nothing but success in terms of building my audience on my own and different opportunities that have fallen off that. But I don't think we've seen the end of success stories with this. I feel like in the last year, maybe a lot of artists have been, unfortunately, kind of forced into that area with everything that's going on, but hopefully a lot have seen the benefits of what it can bring in terms of an additional revenue stream to help them on their way if they're independent, and an additional way to reach fans around the world, and even have a bolt-on option for their touring strategy if they want to make that accessible to fans that might be on the other side of the world but would never be able to afford to go. So live streaming always is an exciting place to be, and I urge any tech startups to keep your eyes on that space, and especially the independent artists that are active there all the time.
I think if I could give one piece of advice, it's arrive with a sense of humility and an open mind. You know, I think all products will require refinement. However much of a silver bullet you think you've created, you know, it will probably always require a degree of tweaking and you know, finessing in order to work. And I think indie labels really want to work with people and find better solutions. You know, they understand that the world is changing and they need to keep up. And that means they need to find ways to do things more easily. They might need to find ways to connect with more people. There's umpteen ways in which they need to refine what they do, and they're fully understanding of that. So I think for any startup, it's arrive with an open mind and a desire to have a dialogue and listen, and you know, accept that you may be going away thinking, okay, you know, we might need to change some things about our product, but you know, we've made some good connections here, and you know, from that we can grow something great. And equally, I think never underestimate how small the world of music is. You know, it may be that you make something happen with a small artist who's also managed by somebody who manages a massive artist. It could be that you're working with a label and you're working with their small artist, but they have a huge artist. It may be that somebody, you know, leaves that label, goes to a much bigger thing, or, you know, which we've seen a lot. You know, a lot of our business has come from dealing with people who started here and then they've, you know, risen through the industry and now they're running something over there, and they still come back to us to work with them because they appreciate what we do. So I think just that basic thing as well of, like, you know, build good relationships and talk in real terms. You know, it doesn't need to be sales patter and BS. You know, just talk about the product openly, honestly, listen to the feedback, go away, you know, digest that, think about what your response to it is, and come back and say, okay, we've taken your points on board. How about this? You know, what if it worked this way, how would that change your view of it? And all these sorts of things, because that to me is always the sign of people that, you know, they want to work with you and they want to make something better, and we want to make something better as well. So, you know, let's do that. Let's muck in and make good things happen.
My golden piece of advice for tech startups would be to actively have these conversations with the artists on a regular basis, so that whatever it is you're working on actually develops at a good rate. Artists are always open and happy to work with anything new, anything kind of tech, and that's exciting for for us all the time. So keep an open mind when it comes to the project itself, but make sure that you're constantly, in touch and you don't lose track, and you keep each other on your toes, and it will probably end up with a great result.
I think if you want to be involved in the music industry, do it because you love the music industry, do it because you love music, do it because you listen to music and you consume music and you want to be a part of this industry. There are so many opportunities of different types of work, whether you're a lawyer, business affairs, an artist, a photographer, whatever is your scope, there is an opportunity for you within the music industry. And tech, huge opportunities. We're dealing with, as I say, trillions of lines of data. When you have lots of different skill sets, you also need someone who's going to help you manage the data. And the more information we have, the better we can be. So music has evolved to being a tech industry by the nature of the way people have evolved in the way that they consume music. Stepping forward, it's all about that solution. So get involved, but do it because you love music.